Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Flock Friday here on Chase's Sports News. I am your host, Chase Coburn, here today. What's next for the Baltimore Ravens after a horrific 1-5 start as they now are at the bye week here in week 7? We're going to break it all down and more here today on this edition of Flock Friday, where I am joined by social media content creator, diehard Ravens fans suffering with me and all of those right now who have to bear to watch this football team every week. Yapp, Matt King. Matt, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Man, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, just like you said, just a depressed Ravens fan like everybody else, trying to avoid watching or doing anything with the Ravens right now, kind of more locked into other people, but it's nice to be able to vent to somebody. So
For sure. Awesome. And I'm so excited that we're going to be able to break this down. If you're watching on Twitter or on YouTube or X, whatever it's called now, X and YouTube, I do have the link in the comments. If you guys do want to call in, we accept comments and call-ins throughout the entire stream, because if you guys want to talk with me and Matt talks Ravens football, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to break it all down here today. So please be sure to call in, comment, do all of that. It helps the channel out a ton, and we want to get you guys involved in this stream as well. All right, Matt. The Ravens are 1-5 after they entered the season as Super Bowl favorites. Kind of when you just step back and think for a second, it's a little crazy that we've gotten to this point with the Ravens 1-5. What's been the biggest problem through those? I feel like we bounce all this stuff around. We talk about all these different things. What do you believe has been the biggest problem that has caused a colossal breakdown of the organization?
there are so many different ones. It's hard to just place it on one, but I think it comes down to communication on defense. I think that is the biggest problem at the moment. They did look a lot better against the Rams, but I would like to see it on a more consistent basis. And they just don't have the pass rush on defense to help this DB group. I really do believe that Marlon Humphrey, Jair Alexander, and Nate Wiggins, and even Kyle Hamilton are all enough to be an elite defensive back group.
Right.
I think not being able to get to the quarterback is probably the biggest issue with defense. And then the back end having so many communication problems. I know a lot of people are going to say it's been the offense just because Lamar has not played, but they were scoring 30 points a game when Lamar was there. And I fully expect them to get back to that. I know the offensive line has a lot of issues too, but it all comes back to defense.
Well, if we're talking about the offensive line and we're talking about the defense, and obviously it's the least of their problems, but the Ravens aren't that good on special teams either. At what point do you point to that guy, John Harbaugh, who's the man in charge? And the Ravens elected to, I guess you could say, stay calm at the deadline, right? They didn't fire defensive coordinator Zach Orr like many people thought they would. They didn't fire head coach John Harbaugh, which I thought was a possibility, a distinct possibility, but it didn't end up happening. Do you agree with the decision to kind of not fire Harbaugh and keep him in tow here in Baltimore, given his history in year 18?
If we're talking about right now, I would say yes. And I know that kind of go against the public there. I just think it's not a very good idea to ever fire a head coach midseason. You never see anything good come out of that. And Harbaugh's been with these guys since training camp and since the summer. And replacing him mid-season would be really hard to do for this group and for them to actually bond together. I think one of the things Harbaugh does well, and it's probably the only thing he does well, is he does stay calm in these situations. And he has bounced back from these situations. Now, does he put himself in these situations? Absolutely. So that's part of the issue, but you can't go against him now, especially if your ownership, you're supposed to be seen as a top organization in the league. It's a really bad look. How do some of the players feel? We really don't know how these players feel about Harbaugh. Kyle Van Noy had some comments about it. Tyler Linderbaum had some comments about it. Like, I don't know. I don't know how bad the locker room really is or if it's even bad at all. So I think right now, no. I think giving him a full assessment of the entire year is something he probably does deserve. But obviously, if it keeps trending this way and they miss the playoffs, then even if they do miss the playoffs, I can see them, or make the playoffs, I could see them moving on. But right now, no.
I mean, I remember I had Cordell Woodland of, a local, analyst in Baltimore on the radio, and we had him on to preview the Ravens season. We previewed every team season here on Chase's Sports News on 32 on 32. But when we had him on, it was the conversation of like, Harbaugh keeps saying it's not Super Bowl or bust, but like if the Ravens didn't win a Super Bowl, he may be gone. Now, when you're 1-5 and you're just fighting for your life and you're on life support, and you're one game away from probably just botching the entire season, it doesn't become a Super Bowl or bust game. And you think, okay, if John can lead the Ravens back to the postseason, maybe it's time to part ways. But then at the same time, it's like, well, then you're back to where you just were, right? Like you put yourself in this own position. You shouldn't be rewarded for getting yourself out of a position you shouldn't have been in the first place when you enter the season as a Super Bowl favorite. So Ray's Hale report thinking just like me, should Harbaugh be fired? And Matthew, I know runs that account, my friend Matthew. Matthew, that's the question that we're all asking. I know I had a clip on Instagram just go for 23,000 views. And when I collab with the Next Network, Josh Berman, and I said that, like, I think it's time to cut ties with Harbaugh at some point. Like, he has won 4 playoff games in the 13 years without Ray Lewis. And so it's like, at some point, when are you going to cut ties? How long is he going to hang on to the coattails of a Super Bowl championship 13 years ago? But Matt, I'm going to throw this back at you. While it has not been exemplified this season, I think one of the things that Harbaugh does so well is he elevates the floor. Whether he can elevate the ceiling, we don't know. But I think one of the best counterpoints to not firing him, I hear 18 years. I hear, they were in the playoffs last year. I hear all this stuff. I hear, it's too soon. I think the biggest counter argument to the case of firing him is that the Ravens are 4th best team in history in terms of win percentage. And he's been a big part of that. And they've been consistently dominant in terms of consistency, being able to collect 9-10 wins every single year. That's what he does best.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with you. And plus we also have to remember this was the hardest stretch of games for any team in the NFL. I mean,
and that's what right here, Ray's Hale report, 1-5. That's a pretty low floor, if you ask me. I could see this team losing 7 games this year if things go right in the second half, and we can talk about that. Maybe that's too ambitious, but yeah, Matt, sorry not to interrupt you, but yeah, I mean, overall, maybe it doesn't apply to this season, but I do think Harbaugh does elevate the floor.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, just go back to what I said there. This is where he's at his best, is where when times are really tough, the team is not playing well, he does elevate that team in that aspect. I'm not sure, but are we sure that he's the reason for that? Or are we sure that's the players? Just because of how players have said locker rooms have gone. If you go back to what Ed Reed said during that 2012 season, I don't think Harbaugh elevated that team in any way. Honestly, they went against him. Those were his words. So, and for him to also go to the podium and say, we need Lamar Jackson to save us. It's just like, why you're saying everything that we're saying about you. Like if you go and look at the 49ers with Mac Jones, they are still playing at a high level. Cooper Rush has played at a good level for the Dallas Cowboys before. And now he just looks completely lost with this Baltimore offense that has plenty of weapons to help him. So, and also not going with Tyler Huntley was a crazy decision too.
That was an organizational malpractice to have Tyler Huntley sitting on the sideline. I said it from the start. I said it before Rush took a snap in Baltimore. It's this big problem the Ravens had where they're trying to, I feel like even with Lamar's trying to start playing like a player that he's not, which is this pocket passer, unless he's been pressured, which that has been frequently with this offensive line. Lamar doesn't like to run around anymore. He likes to sit in the pocket and operate that way. And that's why they thought, okay, if the offense is going to trend in that direction, maybe you go toward a Cooper Rush, right? But this is still a running offense. This team still has Derrick Henry. Tyler Huntley, no, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's the closest thing you're going to find that could sit as a backup quarterback in the NFL, who can play a similar system and play a similar way. I understand that Huntley is not a great quarterback in this league. I understand maybe he's not as experienced or hasn't played as well when he has been on the field as a guy like Cooper Rush. But we even just saw in that limited time frame, sure, he took more sacks, but he made more plays. You felt like he could make something out of nothing where Rush was making nothing out of what could have been something. So look,
and also
go ahead.
Sorry. And also I mean, if you look at it, they were in that game the entire time.
Yep,
so it's like Cooper Rush was making mistakes. I would rather have somebody who could maybe make plays or maybe be a threat in the red zone
Right. It's not
when
like he
they
was
had
like
the
not
tush
turning the
push.
ball over. He had 4 interceptions in 2 games.
Yeah, yeah, it would. I don't understand the decision to go with Cooper Rush at that point, or at least go to Huntley earlier when you have 3 points by the third quarter. That's what I really don't understand about it.
And I think that, look, we could talk about this whole conversation. The Ravens could have won that game. The Rams were handing them the game. They made a plethora of mistakes. And Sean McVay did not coach a great game for Los Angeles, but he still outcoached Harbaugh, which, again, that's not saying much. But I think overall with the Ravens, by the way, huge shout out to Ravens Talk commenting right there. Right here, I also want to put up this guy who's been commenting on the videos, and I'm going to put up one of his earlier comments in a minute. Cooper Rush never looked comfortable or confident. He didn't. And clearly, I think it's kind of ironic how last year Lamar Jackson missed out on an MVP award because people said he had a lot of all pros and pro bowlers around him. And just so everyone knows, the version of the Baltimore Ravens you saw the last 2 weeks is the Baltimore Ravens when you take away Lamar Jackson. Like, that's what you get. Like, you can say
I can't believe people
has,
had this.
That's what you get.
I can't believe people had this phenomenon that this team would be the same without Lamar Jackson. I don't know where it comes from. I understand. I don't think people understand that Derrick Henry, as great as he is, benefits from Lamar Jackson. There is a reason why he is over 30 years old, rushing for over 1,800 yards last year.
Thank you.
That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in the NFL. I just never understood it. It was just a narrative that people were trying to push to get anything against Lamar at this point because he became the highest pass rating of all time. And then people start freaking out about that. So now the conversation is, does he stat pad, which is that's a whole different conversation. But
here's the thing. Look, Matt, I mean, obviously the playoff concerns are still there, but like Lamar Jackson could go and he could win 5 Super Bowls and people are going to say, well, Brady won 7. Like, it's just like, there's always going to be something that is against Lamar Jackson. I've personally at this point, as a fan and as an analyst, accepted it. But what I never understood was everyone loved to talk about how Derrick Henry improved Lamar Jackson. And sure, you could argue that Derrick Henry is a greater threat on that Ravens offense than anyone that Josh Allen has. Or, but Joe Burrow, he had Jamar Chase. But, like, yeah, you can argue Derrick Henry was the most prolific kind of like supporting member on an offense. But Derrick Henry also isn't the same threat without Lamar Jackson. We're not thinking of Derrick Henry as the 1,900-yard runner that he was last year that led the league in touchdowns and second best running back in the league to Saquon Barkley going into the year. That whole narrative, that's not the case if Lamar Jackson's not there. Because the narrative that was in place when Henry came to Baltimore was that he was washed and that he could not add any value. Add in Lamar Jackson, and he's one of the best runners in the NFL. So I just want to tell everyone, if you thought Lamar Jackson last year didn't deserve the MVP, obviously it's a different season, but in that Rams game, they were pretty healthy. They scored 3 points. I'm just calling it as I see it. Again, it's not to criticize Josh Allen. He's another generational transcendent talent at the quarterback position. But Lamar Jackson's right in that caliber as well. And I think he was snubbed of an MVP last year. And now we're going to see if he can play hero ball again. And that's what you mentioned, that Harbaugh is kind of forcing him to play hero ball.
Yeah, it sucks just because we will probably never see a season like Lamar had last year that was peak Aaron Rodgers. That was 2020 Aaron Rodgers that we saw with a rushing ability. That is something we will probably never see in our life again. So,
yeah. No, for sure. We got another comment here. I don't think it's Harbaugh. I think it's a defensive coordinator that needs to be fired. Defensive coordinator being Zach Orr. They need to trade for pass rushers and need to get Lamar healthy. Yeah, well, we hope Lamar Jackson's healthy. He's projected to play in week 8 against the Chicago Bears, which would be a huge win for the Baltimore Ravens. But now I think the conversation just becomes, are the playoff hopes still alive? Because we're going to get to that question in a minute about whether the Ravens should have let go of Zach or whether the defense can turn things around. But clearly this team has a plethora of problems that they got to figure out and fast. Contrary to popular belief, I think last Sunday was a good start. I think they played the game the right way. They were physical. They were aggressive. They controlled the time of possession. It was a 37-23 ratio in time of possession. That's something the Ravens hadn't done this year. They had lost the TOP in every single game. So I think the fact that they won the time of possession, reestablished the rushing attack, even without Lamar Jackson, or physical and, play with a high motor defensively. I thought they did the right things on Sunday and simply just were Jackson-less. whether you like it or not. So I think if you implement Lamar Jackson into that type of style, if they can play that way the rest of the year, I think you're going to see this team creep into 4-5 and then 5-6. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see the Ravens back in the mix. Or are they just not that good? Because that's going to be the other option too. Either it was the rough schedule and the injuries and just everything that kind of came about at the exact same time, or this team just isn't the team we thought they were, which I'm still hesitant to believe that's the case. I still feel like I can't wrap my head around Super Bowl favorites busted season. I can't get around that at least by week 7 that we're in now. So do you believe the playoff hopes are still alive here for the Baltimore Ravens as they do enter the bye week?
Yeah. I fully agree with it. I like I said, like the bye week could not have came at a better time than right now. And the schedule couldn't have been any better than what it is right now. Who knows? Maybe if we had this part of the schedule in the beginning of the year, we might be having different conversations about the Ravens. Like these were very tough teams. I think that loss in Buffalo just really got to them mentally. I think they were in the game again, especially on defense, because I didn't think the defense played very bad in that first half against Buffalo. Just that second half completely destroyed all of the confidence that they had. And then to bounce back, you have to go and play the Lions. You have to go and play the Chiefs. Like they didn't get that chance to prove to themselves. And I think the Rams was a great start. That was a very high powered offense that I was expecting Puka Nakua, even though he got hurt, he wasn't
I was
playing very
scared.
well.
I was scared about what they could
Yeah,
have done, man. I
and
was
Devontae
nervous.
Adams too.
Yeah.
Like I love the confidence in somebody in a younger player like Nate Wiggins to go to the defensive coordinator and said, "I want to shadow him all game." We need that type of attitude, even if it didn't. I know I thought it was a pretty even matchup between those two, but even if it went sideways, just having that confidence in your defense shows me a lot more promise. And I think they will have a lot more confidence in the second half. And last night, to me, watching the Bengals and the Steelers gave me more hope than anything. If Pittsburgh won that game last night, I would be more hesitant to say they can flip this season around and make the playoffs. But with Pittsburgh's schedule, they have a Ravens like schedule in this second half. They have to go and play the Lions. They have to go and play Green Bay, the Chargers. They have a ton.
Bills.
Yeah, the Bills and the Ravens twice. And we know we'll probably hopefully split that matchup this year. But I just think there's plenty of opportunity. This is the best opportunity for a 1-5 team to turn it around because they have so much talent and because of the schedule. I really do.
And they have Lamar Jackson. And
Yeah.
when you think about the concept of like, does 9 wins win you the division in the AFC North this year? Possibly, right? If 2 of those 9 wins are against Pittsburgh, meaning that's 2 losses for them. Like some variation of 9 wins could possibly get you into the playoffs as the AFC North winner. But I think realistically, to ensure you're going to make the playoffs, you need 10 wins in this league. So
Yeah,
that means the Ravens got to go
also
9-2 in the next 11 games. Go ahead.
I think people also forget that the Ravens have not played a bunch of divisional opponents and lost. That is a big deal. All of their divisional opponents are in the second half. They only played the Browns. So now you have the Bengals twice, the Browns one more time, and then you have the Steelers twice. That is a huge opportunity. Those will be the games that will decide if they win the division, in my opinion. If they would have gone out, lost to Pittsburgh, lost to Cincinnati, like I think that is more of a deal, like kind of how the Chiefs lost those divisional matchups early, especially against Chargers. I think those games just mean more if you're trying to win the division. These non-conference, non-divisional games are not as important.
For sure. And at some point, though, eventually for the Ravens, you're just going to have to get to 10 wins. So that does mean you got to get to 9 wins, 2 losses in your next 11 games for a team that's 1-5 and has, I think, the 4th worst point differential in the NFL. That may feel unattainable. That may feel unrealistic. But again, ding, 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 it's Lamar Jackson. And a lot of that point differential and a lot of the concerns will be alleviated when Lamar Jackson can come back and when he will be on the field, which again is week 8, which if it's not week 8, then that completely changes the script. The season is probably over at that point. But assuming Lamar is back, can Lamar Jackson lead it in 9-2 here in the second half of the year? I think he can. Right now, the Ravens started 2-2 in 2019. They finished 11-0 with Jackson in the lineup. They started 3-3 in 2022. They won 5 of their next 6 games, and then Lamar Jackson ended up getting hurt and caught an asterisk on that 2022 season. In 2023, they started off 3-2. They finished 10-1 with Jackson in the lineup. Last year, 0-2, finished 12-3 with Jackson in the lineup. So Lamar Jackson is that transcendent talent at the quarterback position where just his presence alone clearly could do so much for an offense and do so much for a football team. He's going to have to play hero ball, but if anyone's going to do it, it can be Lamar Jackson. It would be Lamar Jackson. And so I think that is really what the Ravens are holding on to at this point. But I also think that for the Ravens to make the postseason, and not only that, but to make the postseason and feel confident that they can achieve something in the postseason, which eventually, again, was the overarching goal Ravens fans entered the season with, to feel like this season is a plus, you got to at least get far in the playoffs. And they're not going to do that with this pass rush, and they're not going to do that with this offensive line. So I guess, Matt, my question to you, what should Baltimore do here at this trade deadline? If you were general manager Eric DeCosta and you said, we know we have a transcendent talent at the quarterback position in Lamar Jackson, we know that he's going to come in and play hero ball and he's going to be the MVP of the league and play at that caliber. Now we need to surround him with talent on the offensive line and in the pass rush. What are you doing if you're Eric DeCosta over the next few weeks?
Yeah, a lot of people need to be a little bit more patient because they're asking for everything right now. But after the trade of Odafe Owe, it was pretty clear that a move is coming, and I think a significant move. If not, then he doesn't believe that this team can make the playoffs. But I think after the performance against the Rams and how the Steelers played out, I really do think that this is the time to go in. And plus, this team will still have talent after this year. So you want players that will not only contribute to just this year. I would rather them not get a rental. I think some players that came to mind that I wrote down was Quinnen Williams. He's under contract for the next 2 years. His cap hits are 14 and 4. So I'm thinking longer, even if the Ravens don't make the playoffs, you have Quinnen Williams. Who knows what happens with Matabike? Hopefully it's not a career-ending injury, but you need someone to replace him at not only at this moment, but probably into next year. So I think that would be a great one. Jermaine Johnson, I'm thinking of a lot of Jets just because you're 0-5. They're obviously the worst team in football. But Jermaine Johnson, he's on a rookie contract. He has a year and a half of control. And that's honestly, if any of them were to happen, Jermaine Johnson makes the most sense. Just because Eric DeCosta likes going after younger talent who is still under contract. He is not big on 1-year rentals unless he expects to maybe give them a contract extension, which usually happens pretty early into that process. 2 other guys, I had Josh Sweat. I know he just signed with Arizona this offseason, but he's second in the league in sacks with 5. Arizona, they're not probably going to have Kyler Murray this week. They might start to spiral. And then the last one was Bradley Chubb, because he's under contract for the next 2.5 years. His cap hit is 23 and then 12, and he has 4 sacks this year. So I think there's plenty of talent out there to do it. I think my favorite would be Quinnen Williams, just because of the inside presence to help not only the pass rush, but the run game as well. But I think Baltimore definitely makes some kind of move. If they don't, then Eric DeCosta does not believe in this team.
I don't even know if it's a big move, but it at least has to be somebody that is reliable and dependable. I think that, Odafe Owe clearly was not an elite pass rusher in this league, but he was a guy who had 10 sacks last year, and clearly his presence helped. Then he goes to LA and he gets a sack in his first game. So overall, the unit is just unproductive. I think the Ravens have not done a good job at drafting pass rushers, right? For a team that has really built a foundation as a franchise on dominating defensively and having homegrown defensive talent, between Malachi Starks, the way he's played this year, Mike Green, the way he's played this year, Odafe Owe, as we just mentioned, David Ojabo, like that same, being able to have these homegrown defensive stars, particularly in the front seven, that doesn't seem evident anymore. But we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, Green and Ojabo both didn't record a single pressure. The Ravens didn't have a single edge rusher record a pressure against the Rams, and they still almost pull away with that football game. And if they had Lamar Jackson, they probably pull away by halftime. So it's just like, it really just makes you think, what can this team be if they can get a pass rusher? At the offensive line, I think you got to add an offensive guard. Daniel Faalele is not starting caliber in this league. He falls down more than a baby who's learning to walk, so he just needs to be replaced immediately. Like immediately, you got to hope Stanley and Linderbaum can figure it out. You got to trust that those are two former Pro Bowlers who will figure out whatever kind of flunk. I don't even know if that's a word, but whatever slump they're in right now. And then, yeah, you got to, I think, add someone else on that offensive line. And if you're the Ravens, I think if you feel confident that likely can get better, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, I don't think you're afraid to trade Andrews. I don't want to trade Keaton Mitchell. I know I've heard rumors about that. I don't think that would be a smart move for the Ravens to get rid of Keaton Mitchell. But in terms of who you'd be willing to get rid of, I mean, I think Andrews is probably your top option. You got to hope you have enough offensively where you can work without Mark Andrews and hope that his value can be used in a different way if he's traded, right? I mean,
yeah. I think the big thing about Andrews is the contract. I personally have no problem with Andrews' play this year. I thought he's played okay.
Yeah.
I thought he's been a really good blocker. I think he's become a really good blocker over the years. And he's reliable. He's Lamar Jackson, one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets. He had 11 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem with trading Andrews. We were all, including myself, and I'm not just saying this for everybody else because I made this assumption too. We were all under the impression that Isaiah Likely was the next star breakout tight end in the league. And simply put, he's been bad. The penalties, he's not blocking very well. He's not getting any volume in this offense. And I'm wondering if the Ravens don't trust Mark Andrews and don't want him on this team, why is Isaiah Likely not playing more football? Why is he not getting involved in the passing game if that is going to be your decision this year?
Well, Matt, you know what's interesting? You know what's interesting, though, because Andrews is on an expiring contract, so is Likely. He hasn't gotten extended yet, but Likely actually played more snaps than any position skill player on the team. Like, except for an offensive lineman, he played more snaps than anybody on the team last week, but I don't think he recorded a single catch. So it's like,
yeah, I think that's more of what
separation.
I know. He's playing a lot,
right,
but I was more saying, why is he not in the game plan? Why is he not more involved in the game plan if he is this weapon that the Ravens need? Like last week you had Zay Flowers fumble the ball twice. Your Rashad Bateman's not getting involved, and DeAndre Hopkins is playing well, but you're not getting him involved. I'm confused on this pass catching group in general. Nobody has really stood out to me except for Zay Flowers in week 1. So I'm just so confused on what the Ravens are trying to do, because this is a very talented group. People try to say it's not, but I mean, Zay Flowers, first round pick, Rashad Bateman, first round pick, Isaiah Likely had a breakout season last year. Mark Andrews is an all pro. Like, I think they have enough weapons. I just don't know
Hopkins
why they're not getting him.
He's not too shabby. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, he's playing really good football too. I mean, he's one of the best wide receivers right now against man coverage and in contested catch rate and all of that. So yeah, I'm just confused on how they're using these weapons and how they're getting more of them involved. And once again, it might be different when we see Lamar. So who knows? But Andrews, I wouldn't say they would. I think since both are on expiring contracts, I think they would like to see both of them for the entire season, because I don't think they even know who they want to bring back at this point.
Right. I think it was obvious that it would be Likely at the beginning of the season, but he has disappointed. And we're going to do something right when we wrap it up, where we're going to do rapid fire 15, 20 seconds on a topic. And I'm going to bring up Isaiah Likely because I think he's an interesting player for sure. Race Hill Report, how many more years before you give up on a Lamar Super Bowl window? As many as he's extended for. If Lamar Jackson's on the team, you're never going to give up. That may sound a little crazy. That may sound like a little bit like too appreciative of Lamar's talents, his natural talent. I think he's one of the top 10 talents we've ever seen lace up on a football field. But I genuinely believe that. Like, maybe Lamar Jackson can win a Super Bowl, maybe he can't. But as long as you have him, you're going to keep trying, right? Like, as long as he's at a prime level, you're going to keep trying because he is that good. whether that will translate to rings at the end of the day, whether you can build a roster around him or whether he can get over kind of his mental roadblocks in the postseason, those are still major question marks. But you see how much value Lamar adds to this team. Lamar's not going anywhere. The Ravens are going to extend him again this offseason. He may demand change, but they're going to give him what he wants because Lamar Jackson is the transcendent offensive talent the Ravens have never had. And they're not going to give up on him anytime soon. So, Matt, I'm sure you agree with me here. As long as Lamar Jackson wants to be in Baltimore and wants to try to win a Super Bowl, they ain't going to give up.
Yeah, it's the same. Well, you just go back and ask the same question for these other quarterbacks. When does the window close for Josh Allen? When does it close for Joe Burrow? In all reality, the only quarterback that's made it out of this big four is Patrick Mahomes. So you might as well ask that question for everybody. It's tough for everybody in the league to make the Super Bowl when you're going against one of the greatest quarterbacks, one of the greatest defensive and offensive minds in football. It's just really hard to do. And I understand falling short in the way that they've done it, but the Bills have been through that too. And,
Yeah,
are the
man, I
Bengals.
would say though, I would say though, not that I would love to kind of pat the Bills on the back or their fan base on the back. The last thing I want to do, trust me. But with Buffalo, the way that they lose, it just feels like they're not good enough, which feels like a more satisfying way to lose than feeling like you're the better team and losing the turnover differential every year and playing uncharacteristic to the team you've been. Like you could say Josh Allen played worse against Kansas City in that AFC Championship game. He still came to play. The referees, you have that one where he reached over. Did he get a first down? The one where they called it a catch for Worthy. Was that an interception? Like, there are so many variables where, like, you feel like the Buffalo Bills played a good enough game to win, and they just came short in Kansas City. The Ravens have only lost to the Chiefs once. And so I think it's a little bit more explainable, the mistakes that the Bills have made than Baltimore's.
So let me ask you this. So you think Buffalo's defense, let's take out Josh Allen, Buffalo's
Yep.
defense looked the same in that AFC championship game than it did all year? I feel like it's very uncharacteristic because I feel like Buffalo was starting to play well defensively when they were going into that AFC championship game and later half in the season. They beat Kansas City. They were the better team than Kansas City last year. And everybody, including myself, they were favored in that game. They were expected to win that game because that was the year that the Chiefs
I don't know
were
about that.
coming
I don't know
down.
about that, Matt. I don't know about
I
that.
I think Buffalo. I think Buffalo is in the same. I thought Buffalo was the much better team than Kansas City last year. I thought they were going to go in and win that game just like they did not even a month before that. I truly believe that. But back to Lamar, yeah, I'm with you though. There's no way with the salary cap going up and all the talent that the Ravens have, they're going to be fine for at least to make the playoffs. I don't know about Super Bowl, but they're going to keep making the playoffs and keep being a threat with Lamar under center for sure.
Here's the thing. I don't know if Baltimore will win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. I have no idea. We'll see what happens. The NFL is unpredictable. I don't think Burrow will get one with the Bengals unless he leaves. I think with the Bills, again, look, I'm not trying to act like it's better to simply be worse, but I think what becomes frustrating about the Ravens and what makes some people, some critics may think it's just never going to happen is like they have been the best team in the NFL multiple times going into the postseason and have lost. 2019, they were one of the greatest teams of all time. Of all time. Forget that season. One of the greatest teams we've ever seen lace up. And they were a first round exit. Or their first game, they were an exit against Tennessee, who was a sixth seed at that time. AFC Championship game, Kansas City. You're the best team. You just win a playoff game by nearly 4 possessions. You're riding high. No team can touch you. You have more wins against winning teams than anybody in history, and you score 10 points and you lose in the AFC Championship game. You lose the turnover battle 3-0 in back-to-back playoff eliminations now. So at some point, it's like you're right there. You're clearly a superior football team than your opponent, and you still can't win. But with Buffalo, it feels like they have Josh Allen. It feels like they're knocking on the door, but the way that they've lost is more justifiable, right? They've lost to the Chiefs 4 times. It's one thing if you run into Michael Jordan. The Ravens have only run into Michael Jordan once. So I guess that's just a little bit, it's like, look, we could sit here and say, even if Lamar Jackson beat Buffalo last year, maybe he's not beating Kansas City because Mahomes is this like unbelievable freak of nature that has been dominating the AFC for years. We can say that. But the Ravens have only lost to Kansas City once. So their problems go deeper than Mount Mahomes. And so I think that is where the doubt lies. Again, do I think the Ravens can overcome that? Absolutely. At some point, if you do have Lamar Jackson and you are that talented, and the defense needs to start helping Lamar Jackson out a little bit more in the playoffs by forcing turnovers on their end to kind of limit that turnover differential so that the Ravens do have more margin for error. But I do think that Buffalo has a better case to make in terms of why they can win in the postseason, at least at the current moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I think it goes back to what we talked about at first was the coaching situation. I mean, if you go and just look at how they lost those games, 2019 they got what's so weird though, and I've never understood it, is in 2019 they had Greg Roman. They got away from the run against Tennessee way too early. We know how that played out. And then 2023 it was the same exact thing. They got away from the run game completely. Gus Edwards had 7 carries in that game. And even last year in Buffalo, they were running the ball with Derrick Henry and they got away from it in the second half, even though they were in the game the entire time. That's where I'm lost. And that's where I think we agree the common denominator has to be the head coach, because you just have to be self-aware. There is no way that he says how bad Todd Monken has been in red zone situations or anything. You're telling me he's not in his ear in the game saying, hey, why are we not running the ball more? Like getting answers in the game at halftime. Hey, I think here's our game plan. We have to keep running the football. We're only down 10 points. We shouldn't get away from it. That's where I'm wondering if Harbaugh actually brings that to the table, or if he just trusts his coordinators completely, which you can't do. You have to set people straight. You are the leader of that team. Yep. So
100%. No, I can 100% see where you're coming from. And I just think that it's frustrating at some point, but what I kind of find ironic is like if the Ravens make the playoffs this year, we're going to feel like we're going to give Harbaugh a pat on the back because of the way that the season has started. But I just want people to remember, even if the Ravens are able to miraculously turn the season around and have the messaging start to resonate with the group, and then have everything just start clicking like we saw against the Rams, but now implementing Lamar Jackson at the quarterback position. And we see this team go on a crazy 9-2, 10-1 run like we've seen before. With the schedule, they could do that. If they go and do that and they make the postseason, they're a division winner, and they get to the divisional round and they lose like we always see, we should be just as frustrated as a fan base, because it's like they should not be, because they had a poor start, it shouldn't be masking the greater issue, which is that this team can't win in the biggest moments. So I'm curious to see how this whole thing plays out. I'm curious to see how the rest of the season does play out, how the narratives change. I will say this, Matt. If the Ravens are able to turn this around and they're 1-5 and Lamar's been absent for 2.5 of those games, I doubt they still beat Kansas City, but we at least see maybe that he puts up a fight if he doesn't get hurt. Now that Lamar's been out for half of the season essentially, for the Baltimore Ravens, I think you look at this season and you say, if they're 1-5 and he turns this around and they make the playoffs, win the division, something of that magnitude, do we just hand him the MVP trophy, or how do we ship it to his house?
Well, there's a guy in Tampa Bay named Baker Mayfield who's playing insane football, who's kind of doing the same thing right now. Baker Mayfield has gone through a ton of injuries on the offensive line at his wide receiver position. We saw what he just did to the 49ers. If he can keep that up, it's going to be really hard. Turning it around, though, I mean, if he goes nuclear, absolutely, it would be the craziest MVP story we've ever seen. I don't know, and maybe you know because you're the statistic guy, but has a quarterback or an MVP won that award after missing games? That's what I'm wondering, because from all the MVPs I can remember, I don't think anybody's missed games and won the award. And who knows? I think right now the front runner would still be Baker if he plays at that level and takes Tampa to the number 2, number 1 seed in the NFC. But I could definitely see it happening.
Here's my question. The Bucks were the 3 seed last year with Mayfield. And I'm not saying that this year's version of Baker hasn't been better. And I love Baker. I think Baker's an incredible quarterback. I've been an advocate to respect him for a very long time now. But I think if we see Lamar Jackson at his best leading this team to the playoffs, I don't care what Baker Mayfield could do. Baker Mayfield could be the second coming of Tom Brady. I don't think there's anything Baker Mayfield could do on a football field that where if Lamar Jackson is playing at the highest level he could perform at, he's going to be better. Like,
yeah, but you got to think about the award.
Mayfield can't surpass him.
They gave the award, and the only reason why I'm thinking that, I'm trying to think of how the people who select the MVP think. And usually it goes off of how many wins do you have? It doesn't matter if you start 1-5. If Baker is the number 1 seed in the NFC and he keeps playing at this level, I think the award goes to him just because of being the number 1 seed, being in the NFC with the Philadelphia Eagles, with the Rams, with all these high-powered teams. It would just be really hard. I don't think people would look past that. And also, there's still fatigue. I still think there's fatigue. Just because Lamar should have won it last year, he was in it last year. People are going to say he missed 2 games. He doesn't have probably the statistics that Baker will have because he didn't play in all 17 games. I think it will be really tough for him to win the award. He would have to go undefeated for me to, if Baker keeps playing at this level. If he goes undefeated and he's a top 3 seed in the AFC, absolutely. But
for me, here's the thing is, again, obviously it's like such a conversation to have. The Ravens first got to get there and then we can have this discussion. Yeah. But I think that this is not trying to discredit Baker Mayfield at all. But like for me, maybe the voters won't think this way, but at least for me, the MVP stands for most valuable player. It doesn't stand for the best player on the best team. It doesn't stand for the quarterback of the winningest team in the league. The narrative and actually the definition of the award, I think, has been altered. But
yeah,
if it's the definition of value, and this is the point I tried to make last year, and people brought up the All-Pros and the Pro Bowlers, we just saw, look at the Baltimore Ravens without Lamar Jackson. Like, you can't tell me that guy doesn't add more value to his team than anyone else in the league.
How many wins, though, do the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have without Baker right now? I think they have 2 at most. Maybe not even that.
Well, who's the quarterback?
Baker.
No, I'm saying who.
The backup.
Yeah, who's the replacement level? I guess you could say.
Let's say you put in Cooper Rush. Same situation. They probably, if you go with the same exact situation, like on Sunday when they played the 49ers, didn't have Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans, or Chris Godwin. I don't think this team wins a game. Their defense is horrific. It's bad. They have won all of their games except for one by 1 possession. And Baker has led all of those game-winning drives. So that's where I'm like, like if you do the same thing, it's probably the same situation. But Lamar does it at a higher level.
Obviously, we could play this game a lot. And you could say the Ravens played a higher level of competition without Lamar, and who knows what happens if they play bad teams. But if you put a different quarterback in for at Falcons, at Texans, Jets, Eagles, Seahawks, Niners, I could see that 3-3. Again, not trying to discredit what Mayfield's doing at all. Love Baker, a ton of respect for his game. But I think we need to.
I love hypotheticals.
Slow down. Hypotheticals are fun, man. But I think first now we do need to live in the present and think about, are the Ravens actually going to be in a position where they can be an 11-win, 10-win football team that's in the postseason and again in championship conversations? All right, I want to do something fun. Matt, are you ready for this? I'm going to give you 3 rapid-fire questions. I want you to give me 10 to 30-second answers on each of them. Nothing more. Just some quick rapid fire on the Baltimore Ravens. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. The first, what happened to Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely? Lamar Jackson's 2 beloved fan favorite targets of Lamar's at the end of last year. Probably the 2 most liked in terms of the fan base and respected. And they've done absolutely nothing this year. And now we're at the bye week in week 7. What happened to 7 and 80?
Well, as you saw last year, Rashad Bateman can take a little bit to get into a groove. I think I'm not as worried about Rashad Bateman. I think that if Lamar Jackson was still in the field, he's going to get him involved. I think it's more of just having so many weapons across the board and having Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins playing so well. I think it's more of the amount of weapons than it is Rashad Bateman. I still think that he's an elite route runner. I still think he is very. I still think he will be involved in this offense later on. So I'm not that worried about it. Isaiah Likely, to me, I have no idea. To me, it just seems he's tapped out. From his, I would say, from his body language, from the penalties, everything just seems like there's a lot of pressure on him to get that second contract. And I think that is showing on the field.
Interesting. Yeah, I do think it is an interesting conversation of what is happening to Isaiah Likely. I also think we haven't really seen Isaiah Likely with Lamar Jackson. We saw one half of Likely with Jackson because Jackson's played 3.5 games, Likely's played 3, but they've only intersected for one half of football. So I'm curious to see if when Lamar Jackson returns, if we see Likely more involved kind of on those scramble drills in the sense that Lamar Jackson that the Ravens are accustomed to with Lamar Jackson, because I think that's what we saw for a lot of last year. Fullback Patrick Ricard, he's an all-pro. He has not been healthy. He's coming back, and Zaire Mitchell-Payton has been a disaster. How much is he going to help the rushing game?
I think he's probably the most, except for Lamar, for this offensive line has been so bad that he is probably the second most valuable piece. Everybody's like, oh, we're missing everybody. I'm like, we need Patrick Ricard on the field.
Yeah.
You saw what Derrick Henry has done, except for last week because he had 18 carries in the first half, but the running game has been horrific. He went under 50 yards like 4 games in a row. He brings that dynamic to that, but you also bring another offensive lineman on the field to protect Lamar Jackson. It also opens up the play action a lot more for Lamar Jackson, which he is so good at. I think that honestly, out of everybody who's been injured, let's say Roquan Smith, I'd rather have Pat Ricard on the field than Roquan Smith getting back. That's how valuable he is, I think. I'm not a big Roquan Smith guy. I'm not a big Roquan guy.
Wow.
Not a big Roquan guy.
Patty Ricard, but wow.
I think right now, he's not more valuable in general, but right now, what this team needs, I think he is more valuable right now because of the offensive line playing so bad. The defense doesn't like. What difference is Roquan? The defense was bad with Roquan. It was bad without. Honestly, they played fine without him against the Rams, who have a good offensive line.
Yeah, Simpson and Buchanan both played really. They had like career games on last Sunday for sure.
Yeah. I think they just have more depth. I think the fullback position is just valuable to this offense. Agreed, as much as people don't want him on the team anymore for some reason, think it's a waste of cap space. That's why I hear every year. I'm like, oh God, you guys don't understand. I don't think.
Yeah, they don't understand the schematics of football. No team utilizes a fullback like Baltimore. That's why Kyle Juszczyk was so good in Baltimore and is now having success in San Francisco. There are only a few systems in the league that can just shuffle through fullbacks like this. But when you find a great one, you build them into this strong all-pro caliber player. And Patrick Ricard is clearly a big part of the offense. I just disagree about the more valuable the Roquan Smith part. That part just kind of was a head scratcher to me, just simply because of the fact that when Lamar was on the field, even with the Ravens' inabilities on the offensive line and on the ground, they were still the best offense in the NFL, you could argue. So I guess you could say, but we don't need to play that either or game. Both are expected to be back as well as Lamar. So now we get to see what happens when it all comes together. And it looks like the Ravens have gotten over the early season injury bug at least. And now we're going to see what this team can do when they are fully healthy and fully loaded. And the team that people said was destined to capture the Super Bowl this year simply because of the talent that was on the field. All right, and the last one. Do you trust Zach Orr to turn things around? Last year, the defense was in a tough spot. I don't know if it was this bad, but it was certainly in a tough spot. And Zach Orr was able to turn things around, shift some things, move Hamilton back to safety, and figure things out. Do you think there's a schematical change that Orr is going to make? Do you trust him that he can shift things and turn this defense around?
Honestly, after Sunday and after last year and the schedule, I'm going to say yes. I'm hesitant just because if they play high-powered offenses, I would say no. Like in the playoffs, I'd be a little bit more nervous about that. But after the showcasing on Sunday, a lot of the players did say they were close. And after watching them Sunday and seeing exactly what's not working, I think it maybe is a little bit closer than what we all thought.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of players that just are not doing their job specifically. They're getting a lot tighter.
My
I
stars.
do.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know I'm glad they brought in another safety. I think
Yeah.
that was an underrated move. I think a lot of people scratched their heads at that. I think it
But why
helped
did they
both
cut
teams.
CJ Gardner Johnson? I don't get that one.
I don't think he wanted to be here. I think that was part of the problem too. I don't know if he could play Stark's position. He's more. There's too many box safeties that all of them are not. I mean, Kyle Hamilton can play anywhere. Don't get me wrong, but he's better when he's closer to the box. That was
Right.
obvious. So I don't understand that. I would like to see. I think this team is really missing a Darius Washington more than I thought they did. And
Yeah.
Harbaugh said there's a chance he can make it back too, which would be insane. But yeah, I trust them to do it just because of the offenses they have to face. They do have a tough one in the Bears. I think a lot of people are overlooking that game and saying they'll be fully healthy. This is a get back game, but this
No.
Bears
Yeah. It's a tough
offense
game.
is something. I mean, Ben Johnson has gotten Caleb Williams on another level at the moment. So we'll see. I guess against Chicago would be a really good test.
It'll be the test for sure, and it'll kind of be the benchmark for where this team is at. Is this a team that could be 2-5? Then you see Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland, the Jets, the Bengals. Can you just go full throttle? Or is this a team that's going to be 1-6 and you're like, all right, let's just say goodbye to the season, have fun next year, right? So I think that'll kind of be the benchmark and the barometer for where this team is at the current moment. And frankly, we keep talking about this. We have another comment here. Shout out to Alexander Soundwave. Is Lamar being wasted in Baltimore? I want to get your thoughts on that one.
Oh, man, that's a really tough question. I'm gonna say no, and the only reason why I say that is there have been bad teams put around Lamar for sure. But I think people also forget how good the teams have been too. 2019 was a really, I know they didn't have the weapons, but they had the defense. They had, they had the run game, Lamar playing well. I think the Ravens have done better than any other team. Like, just imagine if Lamar was taken at 101 with Cleveland. That I don't think we see the same progression as Lamar. And, they've tried to build around him and the offense. They took away Greg Roman, maybe a little bit too fast, but they are trying. So I would say no. I think this is probably the best situation for him at the very moment because of how the offense is built. But who knows? If they keep John Harbaugh around, keep doing the same thing over and over, maybe. But right now, I'll say no.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think very much in the society and particularly in the NFL, we are a week-by-week league. We are a year-by-year league. I feel like we are sometimes a day-by-day league. So I think it's very easy right now if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan to forget about how good the times have been when they have been good. And when they have been good, it's been extraordinary. It's been historic. And, unfortunately, they haven't been able to officially open the door, right? They've been knocking on the door of a Super Bowl. They haven't been able to officially open that door and walk into the dungeon. But I think that they've been close and they've certainly put them in a situation. And right now, no, the construction of the roster isn't great. I also trust Eric DeCosta to go and turn that around in future seasons. If this team is indeed not working as we think it is right now, we'll see if they can turn things around. But if it is true that this is just not the group, we're going to see changes made in Baltimore. And I think Eric DeCosta is going to rework a lot of things here for the Baltimore Ravens. All right, Matt King, 54 minutes. We've been here now. 98 live viewers currently, which is a high for the episode across all platforms. We appreciate all of you who are tuning in here today for the stream. It's been a great conversation with you, Matt. Are the Baltimore Ravens going to make the postseason? Say we do this at the end of the year. What is the conversation about the 2025 Baltimore Ravens?
Oh, God. I'm going to say yes. I think the conversation, I don't think this team makes the Super Bowl. I have to see. I think this team right now, how it's constructed, I think they will make the postseason just because of Lamar. But if they make a significant move to this defense and maybe to the offensive line, I think they can take that next step because of how talented they are. It just can't go wasted. It's so annoying. I think at the end of the year, we're going to have the same conversation as what we did before is how do we get over the hump? What does it take for us to do that after they inevitably lose in the divisional round to Buffalo or to Kansas City, which I think is probably the most realistic outcome. Um, and I honestly, I really do think they will move on from Harbaugh by the end of the year. And I think that's the conversation of who will be the next head coach for the Baltimore Ravens, because that will be the most interesting cycle that ever, just because it's such a position that someone would want, just because you will be there for a long time. So I am curious about that.
He's a head coach that has stood the test of time. 18 years. He's lasted my parents' entire marriage. My parents got married a few months after Harbaugh was first implemented as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. And so they've never experienced, I've personally never experienced a different head coach. So it certainly would be an interesting conversation.
We should be grateful that we didn't hire Jason Garrett. I think people forget about that. That was like the target.
Yeah.
So we should be a little bit more grateful. So I'm grateful for him for his time, but time runs out.
It wasn't for Kyle Hamilton to go out there and say it. It certainly wasn't his place, particularly with the way the team was playing. But Ravens fans are spoiled, right? Like this is their first disappointing, underwhelming year in a long time in terms of you maybe not even getting to the postseason. But that's just become kind of a second. Of course, the Ravens are going to make the playoffs. It's kind of become this afterthought. But now all of a sudden the Ravens fans have immersed themselves in what it's like to have to deal with hardships. I have a lot of friends who are New York Jets fans, and they're like, you have no idea what we go through. I saw a Cleveland Browns radio host on ESPN this morning going absolutely berserk about trading Joe Flacco for a 5th-round pick. We do have it better than most. So we'll see if the Ravens can turn it around. Let's try to appreciate and enjoy the ride. And you know what? Jerry Sandusky, the voice of the Ravens, when he came on my show, he said, number one thing, he said, you could talk about variables and what it means long-term, but just enjoy the ride. You never know what's going to happen in an NFL season. And he is 100% correct. We're going to wrap things up here. Yapp, Matt King, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the show. Check him out, guys. Instagram, I'm going to quickly put up. I know he had his name right there kind of on his handle, which I'm going to put up right now. Check out at yapp.matt. You guys can see on Twitter right now. I think it's at yappmatt. You guys can check out his YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all of his social media platforms. We appreciate you taking the time, Mr. Matt.
Chase, thank you so much. You're doing awesome. And I love the show. And I can't wait to see what you do. If you ever want me back on, I am more than happy to. Thank you for the good conversation. Hopefully we have a better one in a couple weeks. So we'll see.
That'll be fun. We'd love to have you back on. It was a great conversation. 58 minutes now we have been live talking about the Baltimore Ravens, and we could probably go for hours more if we simply had the times in our day. But unfortunately, schedules do fill up. We're going to wrap it up here alongside Matt King. I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long. Huge thanks to the audience, those who have been commenting and collaborating throughout the episode. We really do appreciate it. And enjoy your lovely weekend of Ravens football, or of football, where you don't need to watch the Baltimore Ravens. Congratulations to all of you on that. So have a great weekend, whether it's watching football or enjoying the fall. I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long from Flock Friday. Take care, everyone.
See you, Chase. Thank you.